recording. I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna record. Pull this mic right up to your face here. Smell it, but don't taste it. You know.
Yeah.
That's what I usually say. All right, so get right up there to talk.
Cool.
So what are you saying? I'm not from Shrewsbury. Not originally. I grew up in Wrexham, which for a Shrewsbury town podcaster, it's not going to be a great thing to hear. I mean, I kind of liked being around a town with such a big football club, but I couldn't necessarily always go to the games because I was English.
Yeah.
And you'd think, what? It's not 1940s anymore, or how it
is in Wrexham.
But in Wrexham, there was a big problem when I was growing up with like the Welsh and the English. You know? And so I'd turn up. If I turned up to games, I'd get chased from the stadium easy. And by the time it finished, we did. And then I actually did this one thing. I was in the cadets for years, and they were like, "We're going to go and do a parade on the pitch in front of all these people." And there's all my school friends going, "Oh, look at him!" Giving me some grief. So,
no, it's not quite so bad anymore. I think there's a very big difference between the Shrewsbury fans and Wrexham fans. We're quite an old.
Pull this right up to you.
Sorry. We're quite an old. What's the word? Like conservative, like the town fan base. So you don't tend to get too many crazy things that happen at Shrewsbury. But I've noticed there's this generation of young kids coming through now that are a bit more looking for trouble.
A bit more boisterous.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. There we go. Anyway, I just wondered because you do your podcast, what you do for Shrewsbury is really good. I think there's nothing else out there promoting things that are going on in the town. And I wondered whether you were a Shrewsbury lad or whether you come.
The part of it is to explore why I fell hard in love with this town. You know, what is it? What's so magic about this place? Because it's not just me. You know, there are different people all over the place that, they're not necessarily from Shrewsbury, but will die hard Salopians or adopted Salopians. And I was like, yeah. What about you? Are you from Shrewsbury originally?
So, yeah, I always say I was born in Shrewsbury Hospital. My mum and dad were born in Shrewsbury Hospital. My kids were born in Shrewsbury Hospital. My wife was born in Shrewsbury Hospital. We'll probably all die there. So, yeah, we haven't really moved. I grew up in Montford Bridge outside town. So I was a bit of a country boy and then moved into town when I met my wife. And lived here all life. But I've been a town fan since I was 6. Do you know what I mean? It's
really
something that's been in our blood.
With football, I mean, sacrilege. I grew up in Wrexham where I couldn't really support the team. Okay, my family were all United supporters. You know, it was growing up around that, and I was a bit of a black sheep. And this is during the days when like Ruud Gullit was Chelsea, and everything seemed to be like really like I don't know, draw me towards Chelsea, and I became a Chelsea fan. And I get so much. My dad is a West Brom fan. He's from West Brom. So he's like, you should support the town that you're from. I was like, I live in Wrexham. I can't, you know. So yeah, I had kind of football spoiled for me in that respect.
That's right, yeah. Well, I suppose we'll do. I don't know how you want to record this going on in a minute, but it's interesting because I think about what you do with people and all the things going on at Shrewsbury. But I maintain, as a football fan, there's nothing that brings thousands of people outside of our town in here to spend money to maybe spend some time in the town and get to know it as a place than the football. It happens, half of the 52 weeks a year it's happening, and it's a good thing for the town. Take away how good the football team is and how passionate football fans get about it. For the town to have a football team, it's really important, I think. And there's only 92 clubs that get a football league team, and we're lucky to have one of them, really.
Exactly, and you've got a nice new stadium as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. Anyway, first of all, let's introduce you properly. Okay, so you're GLYN. What's your surname again? Sorry, GLYN.
Price.
I thought it was Price. I was going to say I didn't want to take a gamble because it could be wrong. You know?
It's quite a Welsh name.
Yeah.
I'm not Welsh, but there you go.
I get so much grief on my other podcast for being the Welsh one, and I'm like, I'm not even Welsh.
Yeah, I've had that all my life.
So you're GLYN Price, and you do the SALOPCAST.
Yep.
Which is the Shrewsbury Town podcast.
Mm-hmm, yep.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I love that. That's really good. I came in here. I'll do the one and only Shrewsbury podcast, but I always say to people, but there is one that's about the town, the Shrewsbury, the football club. And I think it goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting because we were the same. We started our podcast in 2016, knowing nothing about podcasting. A friend of mine called Ollie Warner, I used to play in the Shrewsbury Town fans team with him, so I'd got to know him through that in sort of the early 2000s, and wanted someone who was a bit sensible we could do a podcast with, and we kind of have known each other and been good friends since then. So we thought, well, we'll start it, try to figure out. I'm sure you did the same thing, and sort of bought a microphone off Amazon, tried to figure out how to work Audacity on my work laptop, and ours is very basic and pretty simple to record with, to be honest with you. But we just got to where we are now, and it's seen really good growth over the 3 seasons we've been doing it, just from having a go. And I think that's the main thing about podcasting I like, is that you just have a go and see if you can do it.
I'd love to encourage a lot of people to get into podcast, and because there's a lot of subject matter out there.
Yeah.
Whether it's football, whether it's movies, whether it's you do podcasts. There's all these true murders and crime ones that they're smashing it at the moment.
Yeah.
I started off like you. I started off with a blue snowball. Me and my friend James. We started doing my other show, Thor's Kin, and we would meet up via Google Hangouts.
Yep.
With our microphones, and then like you said, no, well, actually, he used to record it on OBS.
Oh, okay, right.
OBS is a one of those programs where you can record your gaming on a PC.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But you can bypass it by just using the audio, So we used to do that. But you can meet up on like Skype or Google Hangouts. Record. Like you were saying, you record 2 separate bits of audio.
Yeah. So Ollie doesn't live in Shrewsbury. The guy I do it with, he lives in Redditch. So obviously he's a fair distance away, and he can't be coming back. We do it every Sunday night. Yeah. So we watch the game on the Saturdays, and then we record on Sunday nights and get it done then. So yeah, he sends me his audio. We normally start at 7. Finish about 8, half 8, and then I just watch Spanish football on the TV while I'm editing it.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's more football on top of football. And then once it's edited, we get it out on a Sunday night, and normally by the time we go into work on a Monday morning, we've had sometimes up to 500 listens straight away. People really want to listen to it on a Sunday night. I don't know if it's because it wants to send them off to sleep, or they're just interested to hear, especially when we've been doing the podcast during 3 very interesting years at the football club.
Yeah.
We've gone through 4 managers now. We've had a very close, run into the championship last year. We've had an awful year
amazing.
this year. Yeah, so it's been like a really good time to cover the club. There's been so much going on that it's really enabled us to get a foot in the fan base, really, in terms of having a presence, because there was nothing.
I'm really
like
impressed. You get 500 downloads an episode. That's really amazing.
Yeah. Well, no, that's just on the first day. Sometimes, I mean, some of the biggest ones we've had in the last few weeks, we did an interview with the club CEO, which did about 1,500, and it's still going at the moment because it doesn't really have a time on it. It's interesting, but most episodes we get at the moment are between 700 and 800. But as I say, there's a lot of
fantastic.
lot going on,
man, I'm
and
really
a lot of
proud
swearing.
See, like I make this show for like everyone, because I see it as, it should not even like with Shrewsbury being conservative, because I'd love to do like a blue version of this show, because I think some people would listen to it, but I want to make this show something that everyone can listen to. But I do a very raunchy R-rated podcast as well, because it's good to wear 2 different caps,
Yes.
Like this, I like to. Welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit. I like to, get intellectual and find out about things. But then again, it's really good to have a few beers with your mates and just let loose, right?
And with football, it's passion. Do you know what I mean? And I was explaining to you before we kind of started recording that it's in my blood. I've been going since I was a kid. Like my mum and dad go, my kids are coming with me now. It's a real family affair. And it is my main hobby. Do you know what I mean? I absolutely adore supporting my football club. And so there are times where something's going on that is frustrating or is, driving you crazy, whether it's the players or the manager. And sometimes that expression of, a swear or sort of getting angry sort of thing comes across. But then we've had a lot of positive feedback for telling it like it is. And I don't think you can really do a podcast unless, 1, you're passionate about it, and 2, you're honest about what you're saying. And as I said, the fan base have never had anything. We used to have paper fanzines. I'm sure you're aware of those things. And I used to do one. We started that in 2005. And so it's kind of an evolution from that, really, in terms of having fan media. Yeah. Because otherwise, as a football club, you just get parroted out the same old sort of messages about this was good. We lost 3-0. It wasn't good. I went there. I spent 100 quid going to Bury to watch you lose 4-0. You want a dose of realism. And I think that's why it's done so well, is that it's given people, mine and Ollie's view of the match, but sometimes that resonates with people.
Have you found that the podcast helps people cope with the bad scenarios that the club goes through?
It depends. As I say, last year it was all really positive, and we were kind of part of the whole drive towards the championship. And
I saw it. It was everywhere. There's posters
exactly.
everywhere. Support your team on Facebook. Everything. It was just crazy.
Wembley twice as well, which is incredible. It never happened in the football club's history before. We've still never won at Wembley, but that's a whole other sore issue. So when it's good, the positive, the podcast kind of reflects where the football club's going. And at the moment, we've obviously had one manager who was awful, another manager that started really badly then, and it's been quite negative, I suppose, this year. But we'd like to think of ourselves as more considered, like you say. We look at what's going on. Why is the team performing like it is? Quite what's going wrong, what's going on upstairs, trying to just look at the whole football club. And even we do look at the community side of the football club, so what they're doing, the off-field stuff that's going on. It's not just focused on what happened in that 90 minutes. We try to take a whole view of the football club because, as a football fan, you want to know everything about a football club. It's
good to have like a real strong passion for this kind of thing, because, we all have the humdrum, go to work, come home, go to work, come home, go to work, come home. So when it comes to the weekend, I guess it doesn't really matter who Shrewsbury are playing. I mean, if it's a big game, then you're more pumped up for it, I guess. But you know, you've got that as a hobby, and then you've got the podcast as well.
Yeah.
You've got your own little punching bag.
It's a bit cathartic, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, I love doing it, regardless of whether people would listen to it or not. We've always said, me and Ollie, that we really enjoy doing it because it gets you to sort of kind of put it together that next day. So you've seen what's happened on the Saturday. You know, we've been in trouble this season with the relegation, but you give yourself 24 hours to try and calm down, and then try and put it together and see, you know, what's our route out of here? What's the manager doing? Why did we pick a player there? What's he doing with this player? And it's led to us having quite a lot of interesting opportunities. So we got to interview the CEO, which is not something I know that's happened very many times with sort of fan media before. And then 2 weeks ago, we got invited in to see the manager as part of this focus group that he started.
Wow.
So I think it's interesting that, you know, we're having an influence in some respects, because people are listening. I don't quite know how far that goes, but it certainly gives us an opportunity to, you know, take things in that we would don't normally get to do, I suppose, and then feed that back to the fan base. Not in any kind of triumphal way. We got invited, just us feeding back to everybody else what we thought of certain situations.
So it sounds like you've got quite a bit of support from the club then with your podcast.
Yes and no, I suppose. It's interesting that for the first year or so we didn't. I think it was seen as a little bit of a troublesome thing, but that goes back a long way in terms of fan media, and the football club always had a bit of a clash, even paper fanzines or message boards. We've
all seen Green Street.
Yeah, and not like quite that way, because the football club wants
journos.
More like that, I suppose, is that football clubs want to have their own narrative out there, and they don't. And a lot of time, what fans talk about is rumours that are not true or things like that. So it's always been that they wanted to keep it in house. But I suppose in some respects, recently there has been a little bit more acknowledgement that it exists and a potential to try and work with it or use it, which is fantastic. And we've got a really good CEO, Brian Caldwell, at the moment, and he's done so many good things at the football club, working with fans, that we've been able to plug into that, I suppose.
I don't want to like poke football with a stick. It's never a good idea, right? But it would be great if you could, as a podcast, bring kind of football fans to the here and the now, I guess, because you know there's a lot of behaviour and kind of language and kind of the way that they kind of communicate with each other. That's very old fashioned. Would you not agree? Would you agree?
Well, you look at some of the things that have gone on in football this week as well that are just not exactly 2019. You know, racism in Italy this week. We had it in Telford. You know, Telford United had a fan ejected for racist chanting about 2 weeks ago against Leyton Orient. So it's, you know, that side of it as well. But I like to think the football club as itself has moved forward quite a lot, particularly with its community work and parts of that. But myself and Ollie are always quite clear about when there are flare-ups or, you know, we did have a lot of fans last season coming along maybe for the first time, and there were a few incidents that happened at the ground, and we're always quite hard on it. There's no place for fighting in football. There's no place for people kicking off with each other, as far as I'm concerned. I've never had a fight in my life because what's the bloody point of it? Do you know what I mean? So, but I've been around it as a football fan. I've seen it. I see that mentality.
No doubt. I absolutely.
I mean, I was going in the 80s as a kid and seeing things that were happening in sort of the late 80s, early 90s, but it's nothing like that anymore. Nothing like that anymore, in all honesty.
Was that like the heyday for the firms and things, or is it?
I mean, I was
picked up a bit again now.
I don't know. All that was probably a little bit before my time, still. Anyway, football had gone through the Hillsborough disaster. You know, all-seater stadiums and all that sort of thing. So there was a big change happening there. I don't know. I think it's underground if it's anywhere, and I don't think at a small football club like Shrewsbury, with the type of fan base we've got, it's really anything that we have to consider. We get the odd idiot running on the pitch. We get fans trying to goad each other. But I would also take a step back and say that is part of culture of football and the tribalism of it. I would never want that to be taken away completely, but there's a line. You never physically attack someone, and you never, you know, there's a limit to how verbal you can be. And we've been pulled up on a podcast for being overly harsh on players and managers, for example. Where's the line? We've had a debate on the podcast.
You've got to be honest.
The line? Yeah.
And that's the beauty of podcasting, is you don't have to censor yourself. You don't have to listen to people. You can say what you want as long as you don't want to lose your listener base. And the problem with being kind of negative, I suppose, is that they put a lot of time and money into the club, and they don't want to hear anything bad saying about it. But then again, how else do you spur your team to go forward? It's kind of, that's what you said, it's a passionate thing, you know. It's
a big debate in football. Like, some people will say, why would you ever go to the football to boo? It doesn't have any effect. There's a school of thought on that. Whereas I'm the opposite. I can't control my sort of, not temper, but I can't control my passion during the game, and I will boo if something's been poor. But football fans are a very, you know, disparate base. Everyone has so many different views on exactly how to be a fan. That you'll never please everybody.
Yeah.
And as you said, you can only be honest about how you feel about football. If people don't like it, they don't have to listen. If people do like it, I'm assuming some people do because they do listen. So every fan's different about the way they approach a match and how they approach what's going on the field. I suppose.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on kind of football at the moment? Are you enjoying football? And is there a period where you would like to revert back to, or because there seems to be an awful lot? I mean, I can't speak for the lower leagues. Obviously, I'm a big watcher of the Prem, but there's a lot of money. A lot of money at the moment in football, and it's kind of it's a bit sickening at times, isn't it?
There's a lot of money at the top level in football.
Yeah.
Being a supporter of a lower league club is a completely different game. In all honesty, I mean, our football club is one of very few football clubs, and this is something I'm very proud of, and most Shrewsbury Town fans are, and it needs to have a wider airing. We are one of very few football clubs that runs with money in the bank and no debt to anyone. We've got a local man that runs the club, and we run it within our means. It means we're never going to really push on to the Championship. Last season was incredible, but the chance of that happening again are probably quite low. But for example, today some news came out that Sunderland spent more on agents' fees last year than we've spent on transfers for probably the last 6 years, and that was just
crazy.
For agents.
Absolutely,
it's a different ball game, and they're in our league this year. It's crazy. It's mad, really.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And who owns Shrewsbury again? I completely forgot.
Roland Wycherley. So he's sort of like a self-made local bloke. He's always from Shrewsbury. I think he made his money in like catering, vending machines and stuff back in the day in the 80s when they were sort of the cash cows. And I think he's just invested well. But in terms of what he's done, he bought the football club when it was on its arse down at the Gay Meadow, flooded stadium.
Yeah.
And then it had a lot of debt then, and over his tenure, we've managed to sell that to housing, make a load of money out of that, build a brand new all-purpose, all-seater stadium,
which is great, by the way. I love that new stadium. It's brilliant.
It does a job, and so we've now got no debt, and so the football club was saved really by him. And like any chairman in football, he gets a lot of grief when things go wrong. So managers this year, he's been seeing a lot of grief from certain fans. But at the end of the day, when you look at his tenure so far, you can't really complain about where he's taken us from and where we are at the moment. Fans will always want to kick on to that next level, and I suppose it's a case of trying to find that strategy to do it.
What happens with by the way, I do remember last year, and I was quite fond because I'd not long moved to Shrewsbury, and seeing the whole town getting behind their team,
it was amazing.
It was something special. I'd never really seen that before. I mean, I know how it can be because despite Wrexham having quite a small kind of football club, they were very passionate about their team.
Yeah.
And they went through something similar as well. They nearly lost their team. I mean, they nearly sold their the race course, and he sold it for housing, like you said.
Yeah.
But they had nowhere else to go. They were completely they were about to get wiped off the face of the earth, and they kind of got saved. And now they built this nice new stadium with the big new stands. And I think they've got a stadium that's far too big for the team that they are
at the moment.
I'd love to see them do a lot better. But
it's funny as a Shrewsbury fan. Like if you said to me, there's one team that you could have a rivalry of every season. To me, despite the fact we haven't played them since 2003, it'd be Wrexham. Yeah. Growing up, they were our local rivals, and we had some really good games there. They were always passionate, always well competed games at Gay Meadow or Racecourse Ground, and. We kind of miss those, and now we don't really have rivalries because all of the other teams around here went bust. Hereford, Telford, Chester all went bust, and Port Vale are on their arse. There's not many teams around here really that have got any money and are at our level anymore.
I remember there used to be quite a bit of trouble growing up in Wrexham. I remember we went to have a few drinks when I was late teens, maybe I don't know. But we went Town Hill, which is in Wrexham. I went to. People listening in Wrexham will know where that is. I went to somebody's house. We were having a few drinks. It was an upstairs flat. And we could hear all this noise. It was at the back of Liquid and Envy, if you know where that is in Wrexham. And we looked outside and we had, I think it was possibly, was it Walsall fans? Could have been Walsall fans.
They're troublemakers.
Yeah. There was Walsall fans, and then there was the Wrexham frontliners. On all you can hear was Wrexham, and I was trying to get a taxi home, and no taxi would come on the street because of all the trouble. So I was like, I guess we go back inside then and stay the night.
Yeah.
So we did, and we came down the next day, and they'd put in 2 or 3 shop fronts, and they'd caused all this damage. And from that moment, I was kind of like, no. I'm not into this whole football firm thing. It's just pointless.
I agree with you. And the sad thing about what's happened in the past with football, and it still happens at certain clubs at certain times of the year for certain reasons, is that it has, you're coming across, you watch some Premiership football, and you're not a Shrewsbury Town fan, but you have a perception of football because of things that have happened in your lifetime. And I can't pretend that I haven't seen things that have happened. And as a football fan, sometimes you look the other way and think, oh, well, I wish that sort of thing wasn't happening. But as I said before, when we've had things happen last year, there was a little bit of trouble with Bradford around the back of the West Stand.
Stoke as well a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and we're always quite. It's just like me and Ollie just throw our hands up and say, "What's the point? Why do people feel it necessary to conflict with other people?"
But the police are pretty good at getting quickly getting on it. And the point of my story, my Wrexham story, was to say that when Shrewsbury were going for that run up towards the Championship, it was just such a breath of fresh air to see everyone behind their local team.
Yep.
And as well, like, you get people that have supported this team. I've never experienced that, obviously, because from Wrexham to Telford to Wrexham to here, I've kind of never lived in the same place all my life. So I had Ron Morgan on here. He's an author. He used to do travel and tourism and college and stuff. And he was like, he's getting on a bit, respectfully. And he was like, I've loved Shrewsbury all my life. And
Good
I was
man.
like, it's really nice to hear,
Yeah.
And we've been to a few games. We went to the most recent one we went to, Blackpool. I think it was the last game we went to.
Yeah.
It's great to take the kid out,
Free. I mean, that's another good thing the football club do. Your kids under 12 are free.
Yeah.
There's not many football clubs are doing that in the Football League. And I talked about Brian Colwell, our CEO, another one of the ideas that came through working with our supporters parliament that we've got. I take my kids and they're free when they go, and I take them to away games as well, which they absolutely love. We have great away days going to all these random northern towns. And
so what's a match day weekend consist of for you then?
I suppose it depends if we're home or away. For a home weekend, in all honesty, I try to just keep it as tight as possible, because I know the away games I spend a lot of time doing those. So I'll just wander up the game probably 45 minutes before kick-off, catch up with some friends, maybe at one of the local bars up there, and then normally come straight home unless we've got a sort of night out planned. But away games are a bit more different. So we're either going away, a bunch of us, on the train for a weekend, for a day away on the train.
Almost on your jollies.
A few ales. Yeah, we don't do it as much as we used to now in our mid 30s, coming on to 40s now, but we still do occasionally do that. Or I say what I've started doing is my children are now 10 and sort of getting on. Well, my lad will be 8 this year. We will get up at sort of 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll drive to, say, if we're playing Bury or Rochdale, we'll drive to Manchester. We'll do something in Manchester. So 2 weeks ago, we went to the massive indoor play centre, which is under the ski slope in Trafford Park. Okay. Brilliant. We've done all sorts of stuff, mini golf, trampolining. So they get something to do in the morning. I drag them along, and they're tired. And then they come to watch football in the afternoon. So Dad gets to watch that. They have a bit of sweets. It keeps them quiet. And then, we have a really nice Saturday. So my wife's a teacher. She gets all the marking done on Saturdays. So it kind of works. That's generally my vibe. But in all honesty, sometimes the lads will want to go out for a drink afterwards, or we'll meet up before. We might watch a Premiership game before. So all sorts of things happen. I have a very
sounds like the
flexible
perfect
life.
weekend. I want to come with you to watch football.
More than welcome, yeah.
He's going to take me in. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. I do want to start watching a few more games. And this is what we said last year. We went to, I think, was it West Brom? It was one of the warm-up games.
Pre-season. That was West Brom. Yeah.
And we were like, do you know what? Right, we're living in Shrewsbury now. And I'd love to get behind the local team. It's just money, I can't afford a season ticket, and I can't afford to,
I just renewed my season ticket today, and it was £310, which seems like a big outlay, but that's 12 months entertainment. No. Each game works out at about £11 for an adult for across the whole season.
How many games do you get every single?
That's for the 23 home games in the league. Anything like cup, you have to pay a little bit more. You pay the normal price for, but normally season ticket holders get priority, and they get a bit of money knocked off as well. So the club does look after their season ticket holders. And if you do it on a finance deal, you're paying 12, 14, 15 quid out of your direct debit every month or whatever it is. You wouldn't notice it so much then, but I like to get things paid and get them out of the way. I don't like having things. I
didn't know you could do it like that. That's a great idea.
Well, Zebra Finance normally do it, but they decided this week to pull out, and they were doing the finance deals for probably 50, 60 clubs in the Football League, so everybody's left scrabbling around at the moment for.
Oh, right, so you're going to get half stands.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
It's like a Man City game.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have about 3,200 season ticket holders, which is not bad. Average attendance this year is just about 6,200, so almost half the people come in are sort of season ticket holders, and I think that's key. You want to retain those fans. They're your hardcore. They tend to be the ones that go away as well. And so, I've had my season tickets since I was a kid, and in both stadiums, you just transferred across when we moved. And at some point soon, I should be getting my children one as well. But we're waiting for them to get a bit bigger. Yeah, I quite enjoy my Saturdays at home where I sit with my mates. I don't actually take my kids to the home game so much because that's daddy's mates time. They know that now. They're old enough to understand.
Too much beer flowing and adult language.
definitely adult language.
Do you have a season that, if you thought of a season right now that was your favourite, what would be the first one that kind of springs to mind?
It's interesting. Last season was fantastic. It was probably it was the best season in terms of the performance of the team and going for the championship that I've had, which is odd because I've been going since the 1990s. But there was one season when we did get relegated to the conference where Wrexham are now, and we were going to all these random football clubs that we'd never been to before: Farnborough, Aldershot, Dover, RMI. Wrexham. Actually, Wrexham was still in the league at that point, but teams that don't exist anymore. And for an adventure, it was a really good season. I did every game that season. I was at university, so I just wasted my loans and stuff on it. And so I went to every game and started playing for the fans team at the same time. So I was getting to know more and more Shrewsbury fans and starting to, for the first time, get involved in our fan community that we have, which has essentially led to all of the stuff that I do now, really. And so in terms of a sort of season, it was quite a defining kind of growing up season for me as well. So I absolutely love that season. The football was mostly awful, and we did get up at the end of the year, so it had a happy ending. And we did a conference season special at Christmas. It was our Christmas special on the podcast this year. We recorded it just around the corner from your house at the Prince of Wales.
Wow.
We had Ian Jones, I think his name is. I think he runs the pub there, and about 3 or 4 of the other fans that we had sitting down, open mic, and we just talked about our memories that season. It was brilliant, just kind of remembering all the weird stuff that happened and memories that people kind of had.
There's nothing better than getting a microphone in front of people and going, right, nostalgia, let's go.
It was ace. Yeah, it was really good. And people were just bringing up stories that you'd forgotten. You're like, oh, such and such did that. Remember at RMI? And do you remember what you were shouting at such and such, one of the managers at Dover or whatever it was? And things about Dover, like we said on the podcast, but we played Dover away on New Year's Day. And it wasn't at Dover because their ground was condemned. So we had to play it at Margate, which is just as far. And just to think, I drove all the way down there on New Year's Day, went all the way to watch that game. We scored with a scruffy late goal. And the 200 fans that were there that day, I always remember, you kind of know most of those 200 fans. And it's really good. The memories and the nostalgia about football is so strong. That's one of the things that you go out with any football fan, and if they're talking to another fan from the same team, they'll just go off. You can kind of get isolated a lot of the time. I think we do that to people sometimes, me and my mates, when we go out. But
how do like, say, fans from a conference team compare to like other bigger teams? I guess you can class Shrewsbury as a bigger team compared to somewhere like Dover.
Yeah.
How do they compare? Do you know?
I don't think fans differ between Man United and Dover.
Yeah.
If you're a passionate fan and you go home and away, or you just go to lots of home games and you love that club and you invest your time, effort, and money in it, you know better of a fan than anyone. It doesn't matter who you support, really. I sit in the office, and then there's the other kind of fan that does chirp me a little bit, which are the ones that come in, bowl into the office on a Monday. Oh, Man United this, Man United that, blah, blah, blah. And then I've asked them, have you ever been to a Man United game? No. Are you from Manchester?
No,
never been to Manchester.
A bit like me with my Chelsea.
That's fine, but who am I to tell someone they can be passionate about it or not? But as a fan that does invest that time and money, I can't be bothered with talking to people about football like that, because I just think I see a very different side of it. I'm no more knowledgeable about the game. I'm not a coach. I've never done badges.
But you've got a passion. You've got a passion, and I've people on the show will be like, "Oh, here he goes again with his passion." But I'm a big fan of, like, if you got a passion, do it, man.
Yeah.
Unless it's something to do with drugs or murder. Like let's do what you want to do. But yeah, I'd love to get behind Shrewsbury a lot more.
Leave it till next year. We might be a bit better.
Yeah. I don't know, though. I think you've got to follow your teams through the...
No,
that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, I like football, but I like English football. And, like, I feel like I'm not racist and I'm not, like, anti-everything England, but there seems to be, like, a lot of big Premier League clubs that I'll be like, they'll play the minimum 2 English players. I'm a big Chelsea fan, and they'll have Barkley on the bench and play
Hudson-Odoi is about it, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's really frustrating, because you remember a lot of the big teams used to have, like, half an England team in there.
Cool, yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like, where is it going to go? Where's the biting point?
Well, that ship sailed a long time ago, in all honesty. Once the Premiership money came in, and these clubs could go away and buy players from foreign countries who they perceived to be better than our young English lads, then that was gone. And young English lads find it incredibly difficult to get games. And so, luckily for a club like us, they sometimes drop down and we get good prospects. So last year we had Man United's Dean Henderson, who was a fantastic goalkeeper, and will definitely...
I've got footage on my phone of Timmy in the stands going, Dino!
He's brilliant.
Dino!
Yeah.
He loved it. He loved shouting that.
He'll play for England. I'm convinced of it.
He's fantastic.
Kid's brilliant. But we also had Ben Godfrey from Norwich. We had Carlton Morris from Norwich as well. And a couple of others this season who we've got from sort of bigger teams as well. And it's a case for us to use those sorts of players and use the problems with them trying to struggle to break through into big teams.
How did the fans generally feel about that?
It depends how good they are. If they're not very good, they don't normally get remembered. But if they're like the ones we had last year, they, even though they played for us for a year, they'll be remembered really fondly. And they'll be invited back or welcome back whenever we play other teams. They'll be clapped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Might be a long time till they ever play us again if they with their trajectories going up.
Do you think it kind of spurs the youngsters at Shrewsbury to do better, or do you think
it is tough because then you've got youngsters at our club that then find it harder to get through because we've got other teams youngsters and we end up loaning them down to conference teams, or Telford have got one of our lads at the moment.
Really? That shows where Telford are.
Talent tends to find its way through, but it can be very difficult. So we've got one good lad called Ryan Sears, who's a right back that is a local lad that we hope comes through. But we've brought through Connor Goldson, we've brought through Ryan Woods, Connor Goldson's playing for Rangers now week in, week out for Stephen Gerrard's. Ryan Woods is playing for Stoke week in, week out.
These names ring a bell because I play Football Manager.
There you go, exactly. and Joe Hart is obviously the biggest proponent of it. And then prior to that, we had Dave Edwards, who's a lad from Pontesbury who came through our football club, is a massive Shrewsbury Town fan, and just re-signed back for us in January.
Wasn't Marcus Rashford here?
He was watching one of his mates, who is a Man United lad that we've signed, Rashawn Williams. Yeah. So he hasn't signed for us, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine that? Rashford would be like, no, Real Madrid, I'm going to Shrewsbury.
It's worth more than our football club, I would imagine. Our whole football club's tangible assets are about 14 million quid. I should imagine that Marcus Rashford's worth at least 80, so it's probably worth at least 4 Shrewsbury Towns the way the market works.
Walk in and be like, this is my club now.
It is sad the way it's gone though with money, because you've got so many old traditional clubs like ours at other towns like Bury, Coventry, Bolton, and they're going through terrible times at the moment.
Especially Coventry, they've been through.
They haven't got a ground for next year. Bury are about to go into administration again, I would imagine, and this time it might be terminal for them. Bolton dodged a bullet earlier this week with a new buyer, but it seems like they're out the frying pan into the fire. And so one of the things that I say about Roland Wycherley as a chairman, he does it very programmatically in a very Shropshire way, I would say. But we're never going to overextend ourselves. It might mean that we have a cap to how we can get, but we're never going to end up in a situation, hopefully, where we're worrying about the future of our football club, because that would rip, like most Shrewsbury Town fans, it would rip me apart if I thought our club was going to go to the wall. It would be devastating. So we're never going to get there.
In that circumstance, then, are you guys in the right place then? Because, I mean, imagine as soon as, like, say the sky opened and the stars shone on whatever, but say Shrewsbury end up in the Premiership in the 3 years. How do you think a club like Shrewsbury that's run things under the radar and kind of, like you said, as you are in the green constantly, how do you think that would change?
Someone would buy it. And someone would take it in a completely different direction to what it's been since the 1990s, and anything could happen, to be honest with you. And we could end up like, 10 years down the line, you could end up like Bolton. Someone came in, creamed all the Premiership money, and then just left the club a husk at the end of it. And that's what's happened to a lot of these clubs that have lost their Premiership status. So there is ambition. As a football fan, I'd want to see us competing at the highest level. I think the Premiership is, an incredibly lofty goal for any Shrewsbury Town fan. The Championship's become almost like the Premiership was 20 years ago. It's now, that's becoming almost a closed shop even there. The money between those two leagues. It's good for us to be back in League One. We were traditionally a Championship club in the 80s. We stayed up there for a long time. But football's changed, and it would take probably either a really, really good season like last year and us just getting over the line, and the next owner to come in with maybe a little bit more money to keep to the same principles, but maybe just push it a little bit further. Yeah. But you're always playing with fire with football, and there's been tales and tales of lots of clubs that have just had massive rises, like Blackpool got to the Premiership, crashed right back down, and now in massive trouble.
How are you guys? How's Shrewsbury doing for like gate receipts and things like that? Do you see like a rise every year, or does it kind of fluctuate at times? Yeah,
so attendances have been going up generally since we moved to the new meadow. So we were starting at about 5,000-ish, and we're up to over 6,000 as average now. So obviously that takes in more money. Yeah. We have good financial records when we put them out. They're well respected. We don't have a huge amount of money behind us, but we don't have any debts. So that means that we can compete in our league, but we can't. If we were going to buy in a player and Sunderland came in, who are on our league now, they would just blow us out the water. And I'd suggest that maybe 2/3 of the league could maybe blow us out the water for wages. So it's about being clever and smart and trying to get in deals early and looking at 3-year deals instead of maybe 1 year to try and extend it. So there's lots of things a football manager and a chairman
driving a rather nice Mondeo rather than a Mustang.
Exactly.
Yeah?
and at the end of the day, you can spend 2 million quid on a player at our level, which we never will, and they could be rubbish. There's still that risk. Every signing is a complete risk. So it's just the big game, signings and building squads, and you need to have the right manager at the start of the day and see how they get on. And we had that with Paul Hurst. Whether we've got it with Sam Ricketts, who we've got now, I think the summer will tell us that.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about your show as well, because what do you guys do? You have, you said you spoke to the CEO. Do you have other special guests on it? Is it kind of a regular thing for you guys?
So it's myself and Ollie Warner regularly present it every Sunday night, as I said, and then we get like a Shrewsbury Town fans on that we've known over the years. So again, with a football base. You have a community of fans that we've got to know over the years, whether we played football with them, meet them at away games, people we've known for years. So I think we've had on I think we've done 124 episodes now. And I think we've had on maybe 40 guests already, which is quite good. Some of them come on quite a lot because they're really good. Do you know what I mean? We've got some really passionate fans like me that are well spoken and give those sort of things, or people with a bit of standing in the fan base, like the Sports Parliament chairman, or we've had various people come on. So yeah, we've had lots of people on, and it's good fun actually. And my brother comes on a lot. My brother's just like me; he loves it as well. And so when he comes on, Ollie can get a bit sidelined sometimes because I love chatting to my brother about the football. But yeah, it's a bit of family affair. My dad's been on, my mum's been on.
Really?
My son and daughter at the end of last year, because they went to lots of the games. I got my mic out on a Sunday night just before I recorded with Ollie. And I said, record me. We'll record 2 minutes of you guys. Tell me what you thought of the season. And it was like classic little kids sort of talking about football. I didn't like that. Or why didn't we get promoted, Dad? And it was really nice actually for them to be part of it as well. So
I've often thought about Timmy throwing him on here, but he's a bit young yet. He'd talk a lot about Mario.
Yeah,
that's
there you
for
go.
sure.
That's fine.
As you walked in, he sat there with his Mario hat on, playing his Nintendo Switch.
Oh, bless him.
That's how life is. And so, with these special guests that come on, have you got fan favourites that come on, like the Johnny Vegases of Shrewsbury? I don't know that.
It's hard because a lot of them are friends, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Everyone that's come on has been really good. And last week we had a guy called John Dorset come on, who everyone knows as Scooter in the fan base. I'm not entirely sure where that name comes from, but he's been going since the 60s. He's one of the old boys. And he was a bit nervous about doing it. He honestly said he'd never listened to a podcast before he came on. And I said, look, come on, we'll just sit in my front room and we'll put some earphones on. We'll talk to Ollie about football like we talk at away games. And he was a bit nervous to start off with, but he was brilliant. He brought his thoughts to the game, and everyone that comes on has got something different to say, or we don't agree on everything, and it ends up being more interesting because I think a little bit of a disagreement makes it more interesting, I think, for a football podcast. And I think it's interesting because Ollie, the guy I do it with, is quite studied and listens to like a lot of the football podcasts, the Football Daily, Guardian ones. Whereas I live on passion. I just say what I feel. I don't tend to listen to any football podcasts, so it gives us like a sort of, not a straight man and a funny man, but it gives us a bit of chalk and cheese as well that makes it interesting. So I can't really say who's been my favourite guest because everyone's been brilliant, to be fair. But my brother will be moaning at me that I didn't say him now, but never mind.
You're gonna get it in the neck now. That's it. You're in trouble. I work on a football podcast actually. I do voices, and I work for a show called On the Left Side.
All right.
And they're a comedy football show. They pick more fun at the Premier League and the La Liga and stuff.
Awesome.
But it's great to be part of something like that because there's a lot of people that enjoy that sort of thing. So what do you do for a living?
I'm a transport planner.
Oh, okay.
Very interesting, eh?
Hey, so what does that involve?
If someone puts in a planning application, so say they're building houses or a wind farm or a quarry or anything like that, then my role is to prove that doesn't, well, not prove, to try and show that it won't knacker up the local roads. And there's lots of things you can do with that.
Okay, so like because the one about building a few houses around here, and the response was, we already struggle for parking.
Exactly, yeah. So parking's one of it, but do the junctions work? Will there be enough capacity? How do people get there and back on a bus?
Oh, wow.
It's interesting stuff. So this week I was working on a project in the Cayman Islands. Unfortunately, no site visit, so I had to do it just from the office. But it's for a big like multinational company, so we work all across the world, mostly in England. But it's a really really varied job. So my job's kind of in major infrastructure, airports, power lines, and stuff like that. So
I find infrastructure such
really interesting,
a mind-boggling thing. So you're almost a statistical analyst, really, aren't you?
It's a lot of numbers, So my career started as a modeler, which was basically computer models of junctions and stuff. So it was all very statistics based. And now as you go on in any career, you become more of a manager of people and projects and stuff. And that's what I've ended up being now. But I've worked on some really interesting projects, like Northwest Connection Project, which was a power line that was going to go from Carlisle to Moorside Nuclear Power Station, then south to Barrow, under Morecambe Bay to Heysham. It was like a 100-kilometre new power line. It would have been the biggest thing National Grid had built since the 60s when they originally built all the pylons. Yeah. It was all going ahead, and then Hitachi pulled their money out, and it never got built. So we spent 2.5 years working on it, millions of pounds, not just for our company, but for loads of companies, tens of millions, all just gone. Dead.
Oh, that's crazy.
Frustrating, but that's just consultancy. I'm afraid it's the way it works.
Because there's lots of changes coming to the UK. The railway line they're building at the moment.
HS2. Yeah. So just had someone from our office leave to go and work on that project. And funnily enough, someone else who works in our office lives right next to the railway line. So they were like, I'm coming to get you now, because obviously living right next to this new railway line was not what he planned when he moved into his leafy place in, I think it was Burton or somewhere like that. But so HS2 is one of the big infrastructure projects. I'm working on an airport at the moment, for example, and there are not many new airports coming forward in this country. So it's very interesting that there's still stuff being built despite all of this talk of there being no money, austerity, Brexit. Infrastructure has to get built.
Well, this is the new road they're putting through the bypass. Yeah. I bet you saw it in the paper and you're like, oh.
Yeah, there's some other consultants working on that. Unfortunately, that ship sailed a long time ago. The funny thing is, when someone asks me what I do as a job normally, and I say a transport planner, they go, "Oh, do you work for the council?"
When you said
I've never worked for the council.
Do you know what I thought when you said transport planner? You're gonna laugh. Those guys that stand on the end of the runway with the light flares in their hands, directed planes.
Be an easier job. I'd probably take that, to be honest with you. So I do that, and then I say it means that in terms of job, it's 9 to 5 office work, or I do work in the evenings.
Oh, that's
as well.
handy.
So Sundays and Saturdays, football, it's easy to do that. And obviously being an office job as well, it kind of gives me the opportunity to check up on podcast numbers and hit this, that, and the other during my lunch breaks as well. So it's quite good. I do a bit of site work every now and again, and get out and have a run normally when I'm doing that, just to break it up. But yeah, it's an interesting job. I love it. Most people would say it's incredibly boring, but I absolutely love it.
I imagine it like your head running like a calculator, and then as soon as you get to football, you can kind of just...
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah.
I think everyone needs regardless of whether it's football or not. Everyone needs an outlet, don't they? They need an outlet for things that go on in life, because life's never perfect, is it? At the end of the day, and if you've got something you can invest your time in, I'd say it's really useful. So my two things are football, which obviously is one of my passions, as we just talked about, but also just running. I absolutely love doing ultra races and just running for
really. I need to get into that. I mean, I'm trying to lose a bit of weight. I made a joke a few weeks ago about doing the Shrewsbury 10K. Did you do that?
I've done it like every year up until this year. It's the first year I did it.
Yeah, I made a joke saying because I'm trying to lose a bit of weight anyway, because I got boobies. But no, I was like, maybe if I should train for the next year's 10K as a joke, and everybody got on board. And I was kind of like, oh, no,
good idea.
Now I need to learn how to run. So I got gym membership. I'll start making use of it. But I want to start like running around here. But I'm going to lose a bit of weight first because.
Well, we're lucky, aren't we, really, living in Shrewsbury? This is one of the things about the town that I love, is that it's got a massive park in the middle of it, which is beautiful.
That quarry is beautiful. I mean, I take my little boy, you see all the bikes and stuff behind you. Yeah, we like to go for a wander. We're in a lucky place to be, Stone's throw away from the river. I do remember, actually, the one day I kind of made a mistake with the river. I went to do an interview at the Ark in town, and I had all my stuff with me. And what I'd done is I'd finished a night shift, and then I'd parked up, grabbed my stuff, and went straight into town. I got to the Ark. Sorry, I did my interview. I was absolutely shattered. So I grabbed up my stuff again after the interview, and I thought I'll go down. And is it Mary Southwaters Way? There's a little hill as you cross the road down into, and I thought walk along the river towards Bellevue. As I was walking along, I was halfway along, and I realised the river was flooded.
You're going the other way. Oh, yeah.
So I was like, I was that tired. I was that achy.
Was it deep?
I walked straight through the water. It was up to my ankles. It wasn't that deep, but like my kicks got ruined, and I squelched all the way home. And it was just one of those things. I was like, oh, I love the river. Yeah.
Well, this is it. This is I say to you before we started recording that I was born in Montford Bridge, so having a river has always been part of my life. I lived right next to River Severn my entire life growing up, and then moved into town, obviously, and the River Severn is synonymous with this town, isn't it? It's part of its. Part of its history.
I hadn't driven that way in a while, because obviously, like living in Wrexham, I used to go that way.
Yeah.
And then I drove past, and I was like, "Where's the white pub gone? There's a big giant white pub, and now there's like 2 houses there." I was like, "When did that go?"
Well, we had the bypass in the 90s, and the funny, we're going off on massive tangents here, but I quite like it. But I would say that a large percentage of the reason why I ended up being a transport planner is because of that bypass being built when I was growing up in Montford Bridge. I was fascinated with that road being built as a kid, like right in my sort of, I don't know, 9 to 12 as an age like that, with cars were really, playing with cars and stuff. But seeing a massive road get built was that, and then I was always fascinated in infrastructure, and then every decision I made with my career was aiming towards travel, traffic, roads.
I bet you'd be brilliant at SimCity or...
I was obsessed with SimCity growing up.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, SimCity, any kind of city builder game. And
I love stuff like that. Oh. But this is what this show's for. This show's designed to find out more about you, let your listeners know more about you. Because, like, how free is your show? Is it just football, or can you kind of go on these kind of tangents,
We often... It's quite focused, to be fair, about football, but not just what's happened on the pitch. So we try to cover our fan base and the... I say a lot of stuff we talk about is what's going on in terms of social media and how people are talking and the reactions and stuff, because it does play a part in how a fan base sort of can turn at some times. We turned against our old manager, and there's been people saying that we were a big part of that in terms of how we were talking and reflecting the rest of the fan base. Whether that's true or not, I'm still not 100% sure, to be honest with you. I suspect there is a grain of truth in it. So it's quite focused. But, you know, I'm off. I will come across in that podcast when we talk about it, of being passionate about my town, not just about the football club. You know, I'm born and raised here, as I said, and this is my town. And so, yeah, that comes across, I think. But we are quite focused. And I think we like it being just about the one thing. And
yeah, of course.
It kind of is a recurring episodal thing about Shrewsbury Town Football Club. And yeah, I like to talk, but I could talk about anything, to be honest with you. But I do like talking about football.
You kind of need, if you're going to run a podcast, you're going to know how to talk. I mean, I've reached out. I've decided that this podcast is too big for me to do by myself. It started off as a little thing, and it's kind of developed into something big. I mean, I went to an event a while ago, went to a room full of people, got introduced as the guy from the Shrewsbury Biscuit, and some lady was like, "Oh, I follow you on Twitter," and I was kind of like, and I was like, that's great, you know. So this thing is getting big, and I want it to get bigger because the whole idea is to raise the profile of the town, even if it's just by 2%. You know, just do what we want to do. So I decided to bring in a team. We've got 2 new people starting on the show, and what I did was I said, "Okay, guys, if you would like to send me a video of you just talking, just talk, right?" And I know how awkward that is, okay? The reason why I'm bringing people in is because I hate to monologue. I don't know if you ever monologue for your show.
No, luckily, whenever we've had one of us being away, we've always got other guests in. But to be honest with you, I would say that we don't monologue, we rant. There's a big difference, because like I'll go off and Ollie said to me when we finished recording something, she goes, "You know, you would talk for 4.5 minutes there." I was like, "What?" It's just when you're really into something and you're laying it all out, you could just go away, don't you, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like at the beginning of the episodes, I like to do like an intro, you know, so like, this is what this is about. Welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit, you know. But I do it staring at my clock on the wall, and yeah, I didn't want people to get the wrong idea of that one. I do it staring at the wall, and it's awkward. So for me to say to people, send us a video of you just talking, it was a hard job. But we've got 2 new people starting. My friend Shane Hinton, good friend of mine. He works with me on Thor's Kin, and a girl called Jodie. We're going to meet up at the weekend. And it's going to be. I'm really excited. Really excited because you've got 3
Getting
people.
Getting to know people is just the point of the
That's the beauty of this show, and I bet you find that with the podcast as well.
Yeah, we do.
You do, you know.
It's a bit more interesting because you're in the same boat we do, whereas when we get guests on, they always come to my house to record, and a lot of the time I'm thinking, I don't know this bloke. I'm inviting him into my house with like, you've just done it with me. I've just wandered in your front room, met your wife and kids, and like, who's this coming into my house? But as soon as you get to know someone, it always settles down, and you can kind of judge someone. But so generally, we've always invited people on that I know, but we're starting to get to the point now where we'll invite people on we don't know, and obviously you won't know these people, and it's quite good actually.
I feel like all you can do is ask.
Yeah.
I mean, with other projects I work on, I am speaking to celebrities I have no right inviting on my show, and you ask them and then go, yeah, okay. So maybe there are some ex-footballers that you maybe had a stint at Shrewsbury. Is there anybody that is there a wish list that you've got?
It's funny because we're into our 3rd season now, and we started off the first season, we just did weekly episodic Sunday night podcasts. Second season, we tried to do some specials. So we recorded a Christmas special. We did an end of season review with the guys that present on Radio Shropshire, Mark Elliott and Lewis Cox, who writes for radio for the Shropshire Star. So we got them on. That was kind of like we didn't really know them too much at that time, but you know, got to know them. But we're starting to do more things now outside of just a regular podcast to give it a bit more. And one of the things we do want to do is interview people. But I'm interested to hear what you'd say about that, because we're at a point where I've never interviewed anyone in my life. You know, I do a podcast, but I've never really sat down with someone to ask them questions about their career or anything like that. And as a football fan who grew up watching these people play and has a sort of like a reverence to them, I personally think I would find it really awkward for about the first 10 minutes until it settled down to interview Dave Edwards or, you know, one of these players I grew up watching who's conceivably younger than me.
I think you'd be great because you very similar to me in a certain respect. You're kind of very outgoing, you're confident.
Yeah, I'm sure.
What I tend to do is, I mean, I didn't do it with you because I thought I'd run an experiment. I said this to my wife. I said, all right, okay, I've got my book here. I run the show on the same sort of 10 questions that kind of segue into each other. Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed so many people now. I remember the first person I ever interviewed. That was Charlie Adlard.
Okay.
We messaged him for the other show, and I said, "Would you come around? He's local, draws for The Walking Dead, amazing, you know, famous man. This guy's famous." And he was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll come around your house." And I was like, oh, "What?" I wasn't expecting it, and he came around my house, and it turns out he was a nice guy. I bought in loads of posh tea and posh biscuits and things, and I was kind of like,
"They're not out tonight."
Yeah, they're not out tonight. No. My wife said, I can have a figure roll. Want a
I'm
figure roll?
only joking,
No. And he came around, he was a really nice guy. And made me realise that these are just human beings. You know?
I think that's what I would think eventually, is that you would understand that there is no difference between me and a professional footballer. If anything, they would probably just be nervous about it.
With football, the interesting thing is, I got this book out for no reason. I didn't even show you the questions. I'll show you at the end. But the thing is, there's more to a human being than football. I think if you could find out what would they do, right? What would they do instead of playing football? What's the one thing that took their mind off? And what happened after football?
Yeah.
What would you do to
the story?
What inspire? Yeah, it's just so much to find out about someone. I think
that's what we used to do with the fanzine. We used to interview people by email, but a lot of the questions we'd ask, which we found the most interesting, were ones that were not about what happened. What did you think when you scored that goal against such and such? It was more like like funny stuff, really, to do with fanzines, because there's a comedy element to it, and we used to get some really good stuff out of it. To be fair, and I think I've been putting it off because I just think it's something different. To say, I'm not any kind of media expert. I'm not, I don't perceive myself to be too good at this. I think it comes across well on the podcast, but we're learning as we go along, and we still make mistakes, I think. But the interesting thing about it is that the whole reason I personally ended up wanting to do a podcast, other than being passionate about football, was when I grew up in Montford Bridge. One of my best friends was a guy called Colin Bloomfield, who used to, basically, we all grew up in Montford Bridge, me and my brother and Colin. We were sort of inseparable when we grew up, and he went on to have a career in the media. And he went on to work for BBC, and he was a presenter for BBC Radio Shropshire at first. Then he went on to host the Drive Time show, then the morning show in BBC Radio Derby, and his career was just on the path of heading towards maybe 5 Live or something really significant. He was doing fantastic. He also did football commentary.
That's
so
amazing.
He commentated for BBC Radio Derby on Derby for years. He was doing brilliantly. And unfortunately, the poor lad got really unwell.
Yeah.
And within the course of about 3 years, he passed away. And I remember sitting down with him, not far from that sort of thing happening, and talking to him. And we'd often talked about podcasts, even back maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And he was saying, you should have a go at doing something like that. Because I used to like doing radio phone-ins and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'd always try and have a go at doing stuff like that for the club. And so that was one of the reasons why we ended up doing it, really, was I kind of was motivated to do it in the end by Colin passing away, which was really sad, because if there's one thing you'd ask me for, if there's one thing I'd change or one thing I'd go back to, it'd be that Colin could have listened to one episode of our podcast, because in essence, for me, it is kind of a little bit of a memorial to Col. But yeah, it's funny the way that life takes you sometimes, isn't it, I suppose?
It's good that you can do that, though. We can do this. Anyone can do this, and your podcast has proved to me that there's an audience out there for everyone, and even the smallest towns. I mean, Shrewsbury's quite a big town, but I mean, even the smallest towns, there's so much going on. And I've met there's a couple of us around here that do podcasts.
Yeah, I didn't know until I met you. We talked to you online,
yeah. And you've got a far bigger audience than me, but that's because you have 6,000 people sat in the same
captive audience.
Yeah,
we're still blown away by how many people listen. I mean, we'll probably go through 100,000 all-time listens at some point in the next, I don't know, 6 months, I'd imagine. We're up to 70,000, I think. And we get good numbers every week now. And the thing that I think is, you must have the same thing as me, a spreadsheet set up with numbers in to track what's going on. And we sort of see what's going on with the listens. We host it on SoundCloud, and they give you some good stats there. And so we see growth every 3 or 4 weeks. We'll check it, and you're just seeing a little bit of a step up every time. It's never massive, significant steps, but we're growing. And this season, again, has seen it. And when we started, we honestly didn't think there'd be that many people to listen, because you say you've got a captive audience. You've got to remember the fan base of Shrewsbury Town is generally pretty old, and not of the podcast generation, or generally people that listen to podcasts so much. I know that's a sweeping generalisation, but it is true. And we're starting to now break into those people, I think, and the word of mouth gets around. We've done literally no advertising other than using social media for it. We've not printed stickers up or got adverts in papers or anything like that. It's just been through word of mouth by us working people we know in the fan base.
I bet you'd love to stand in the middle of the pitch with a megaphone and be like, listen to Salo.
Make some money out of it. That'd be ideal, but unfortunately we're a long way from that. But yeah, we say it costs us money to do it every year. I'm sure it's the same thing with you. We pay our £37 each for hosting on SoundCloud, new mic every now and again, and fixing laptops when they break. Other than that, it's a pretty cheap venture to do. That's what I mean. They say that anyone could do it with a decent mic. And
you're doing. I'm so proud of you guys. That's really good. And I'm glad you brought up the point about the older generation, because that was one of my main goals for this show. Is to try and get introduce people into podcasting, because it is a verbal magazine. And one that's about your hometown, like what this is meant to be. It means that you always have like a connection to what's going on around you, and that's what I like to bring. And I'm glad that I like to bring different things. I mean, we had a guy that was doing a rap battle a few weeks ago, because they're doing rap battles up at the Was it called Bottle Market?
Is a fact for you. I once hosted and played out as a DJ a hip hop night at the Bottle Market.
Yeah, really? That's fantastic.
One night, Subterfuge it was called, and me and my brother did it. We basically put together a playlist on this thing called I think it was on LimeWire.
Wow.
And linked it all together, and then just press play. And these people kept coming up to ask us to do stuff. And we were like, I'm not sure how we know how to put new tracks in. It was like we were doing a favour for someone as part of another night. But I always dine out on that. People, what's one thing about you no one would know? I did a DJ set in the Bottle Market. It was a hip hop DJ set.
I always imagine like when you go to like see like Calvin Harris or something on stage, and he's got this big box around him, and there's all the speakers, boom, boom, as he's playing, and he's just sat there playing Angry Birds.
Yeah, he's not asked, is he? He's not bothered.
There's no need. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, but
I should hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, for the money that he gets.
Oh man.
So where do you want to take this show then? Would you like to do spin-offs? Would you like it to grow? I mean, it's growing anyway. Like, what was the goal be?
It's tricky because we're both family men. Well, I've got 2 kids, and Ollie's just got married last summer. Had a fantastic wedding, which I was lucky to be invited to. So we do it around our lives, to be honest with you. And I think it's more a passion project for us. Yeah. It's something that we love doing, and if it grows, that makes us happy and we're excited. I think that the aim is to do what we were talking about before, maybe do a few more different interviews, get some interesting content out there that we've not been doing before, and just to see it grow. I mean, they have something called the Football Blogging Awards every year, where potentially podcasts of football clubs can be nominated and potentially win quite a prestigious award. I'd like for us to be in the consideration of that within the next 3 to 4 years.
A lot of those things you have to buy into, don't you?
And also, it's really hard for a little club like Shrewsbury with a small fan base, because a lot of it's voted by players. And if you're up against what is the daddy of them all, the Anfield Rap, the Liverpool podcast, they can have 50, 60,000 fans voting for them. You've got no chance of winning it. So, but it'd be nice to be mentioned in something like that, because we think it's. We personally think what we do in terms of a football podcast is a little bit above what some other football clubs have got. Yeah. We put a high degree of professionalism into it. We do try and keep our audio as clean as possible. We try to do the best job possible, and we don't ramble on too much. We keep it pretty focused, and I think that's what people want to hear. I don't think you going off topic or talking about our lives too much is really what our listeners want to listen to.
No, they want to hear the football banter, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's funny, we'll drop the occasional thing that's happened to us in, like the other week, I drove up to Rochdale to see Shrewsbury play. Yeah. I got there, and then I realised I'd driven to Bury by accident, which is the town across. Yeah. And so my little lad had to say to me, Dad, we're in Bury, we're not in Rochdale. I was like, oh yeah, we came to Bury earlier this season, why are we back here? So things like that. And I think there's just sort of like the story of your football supporting day, and like the question you asked me before, I think that's more of how we do it. But yeah, in terms of what I want from it, I just want to keep enjoying it and then
keep going,
building it, building it with the fan base, I suppose. I say one day it'd be nice to make money out of it, but I can't see any perceptible way for that to ever happen, so I've already abandoned that idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the goal, isn't it? Well, it's not the goal. I mean, no, I got a full-time job as well as I do this. I just don't stop. I mean, somebody mentioned earlier on the Biscuit page, like, you just don't stop. And I don't. I work on 2 podcasts. One that's just gone quite big. And this one, I'm pushing to try. Because I'd love to stand in the middle of the market square and be like, guys, listen to my show. Because I think the bigger like shows like ours go, the more profile Shrewsbury gets, and the more people listen to what I'm talking about. If I'm talking about a business or an event, then that does well as well. So it kind of...
I actually say as a layman who only found out about your podcast, what was it, maybe last 6 or 7, 8 weeks, however long it was, I wasn't aware of it up until that point where I kind of tweeted you to say, there's someone else doing a podcast in there, and it's getting that recognition and that visibility. But I'm certainly, as far as our podcast, happy to help kind of put your podcast out around our fan base, because our fans are generally all Shrewsbury people, and I would want to know what's going on in Shrewsbury. And I've listened to a few of your episodes. I didn't listen to the one about the lady that was doing the yarning, because I didn't quite feel that was in my wheelhouse. But no,
that's the beauty of my show, is you can pick it up and you can put it back down, and that's good. I like that. I like speaking to like authors and artists and business owners. I mean, I spoke to Mike from Stop Cafe, and I've spoken to Becky. There's so many like bright, vibrant, creative people in Shrewsbury, and if you're creating a podcast, if you've got running your own business, or if you're doing something that I think is amazing, like Ron Morgan's a brilliant guy. He wrote an amazing book, so I'll get him in. It's
funny. I was thinking about, like, if I was doing your job, what kind of, because I've obviously lived in the town all my life, thinking that person's really interesting. That person. The people that run the Shropshire Shufflers running club, I bet if you ask them, they'd be really interested.
Ron is the one that started the Shropshire Shufflers.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, there you go. I didn't know there's a lot of Rons in Shrewsbury, so I wasn't too sure whether it is. But there's lots of different groups and stuff within Shrewsbury that working on a football side of it, you come across lots of different things as well. Yeah. Business chamber and all that sort of thing. You got a very wide pot of people to eventually talk to.
Exactly. Well, Shrewsbury's bottom. I'm quite privileged, to be honest. I'm quite glad. I said to my wife jokingly, there's the in-betweeners joke. I got a podcast pod friend.
Oh, it was a bit like that. I was talking to the guy, that obviously my co-host, Ollie, my mate, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I noticed he called you the host and didn't mention me." I was like, "I hadn't told him I had a co-host yet." He was he's getting his nose put out of joint. I was like, "Oh well, that's it. I'll be swanning off now, doing it with him." And he was laughing, but yeah, it's nice to have, and that's the thing I think you'll enjoy if you get someone else working on this with you, is you'll get to have someone who shares the passion in the podcast as well.
And that's what I want to bring. I mean, with Thor's kin, I don't mind mentioning Thor's kin now. I used to be worried about mentioning that on the Biscuit, but I don't mind now. It's a very R-rated show, and I thought, reputations and things like that. But that show's very different. It's almost like a Top Gear-esque kind of like bantery show, where we give each other grief is the word. And I wanted that with the Shrewsbury Biscuit. I wanted people to bond with the new guests as we kind of bond. And Shane I've worked with, and Jodie I'm looking forward to working with too. It's going to be really, really good. I'm looking forward to it. And also it adds a different dynamic, because I bet you and Ollie have different opinions on different things. I bet you have you had the odd argument on there now?
We have. I was saying that's what kind of makes it interesting, though. You don't want everyone to agree. And we've had guests come on who we've strongly disagreed with about certain things. And it might be the most minor point. It might be like, that was a pen, that wasn't a pen. And we'll have a big...
That wasn't offside. What are you on about?
Yeah, exactly, something like that. And we have our sort of ongoing, what you might call our long-running jokes. So we had a centre-back, right-back, called Jermaine Grandison, who played for us for years. I loved him. He was a really skillful bloke, but he was also a massive powerhouse. Yeah. And one year we got promoted up back into League One, and he fancied himself a singer. He used to put things on Instagram and of him singing in a really high-pitched voice. And so he went up on the balcony of the stadium, and someone gave him a microphone to sing, and it wasn't very good. Everyone was in tears and laughter. Anyway, I loved him. He was one of my favourite players for the last few years. But Ollie never rated him. Didn't think he was a good centre-back. And so we constantly have this thing where he's like the benchmark. Whenever we want to disagree about something, we always bring up Jermaine Grandison. So we do have these like on-running jokes, I suppose, that regular listeners will sort of crack onto. But yeah, there you go. I even managed to get Jermaine Grandison on this podcast. Shows you how much I love him.
Right, let's give your podcast a proper good shout out there. Where can people find you? Tell people about your show, what it's called.
So it's called SALOPCAST. It's hosted on SoundCloud, but we are also on iTunes, Spotify, and loads of other, like the Android
Podbean,
Podcast. Yeah, it'll be on all of those ones. So it gets RSS feeded onto all of that. It's there. We basically record it on a Sunday night, and it goes out on a Sunday night for the regular episodes. But we do also put up a fair few specials. If you go onto our SALOPCAST SoundCloud account, you'll see that we've actually got playlists of all the seasons. So it's by season, and then we've also got the specials in there if people want to go and listen to those. And yeah, it's there and it's not going anywhere.
What about social media? What's your handle?
Oh yeah, I should have said that actually, because one of the funny things about it is that we've got a SALOPCAST Twitter account, which is where we do most of our sort of interaction with the fans. But being a football-based podcast, you basically have a wide variety of sort of social platforms that go on anyway that are not necessarily ours. So we have a SALOPCAST Twitter account which you can follow, and that gives out all the episode information. But my actual Twitter handle is B&A Fanzine. So as I said, my fanzine is where I kind of came into this from that, and that's got I think it's got 3,500 followers, and is probably more of a pain in the backside to the football club than maybe the podcast is. I wear two hats. I think I'm a bit more. I don't know. I'm much more considered on the podcast because I have 24 hours to calm down. But the Twitter is like instant tweeting at the game.
I bet that's a nightmare.
It's fun. It's really good fun doing it.
Do you not get a lot of abuse on there?
No, loads of it. Yeah, but yeah. I think, and I can have a really long chat about this, and we did on our podcast a few weeks ago about social media, because a lot of football players are starting to suffer. I don't know if you saw there was a report about it, and it's really affecting them, the negativity. Yeah. And I suppose in some respects, if you put your head above the parapet for anything, whether you're a footballer or a podcaster or a celebrity, and you've got a social media account, you leave yourself there to be fired at. Yeah. And it's where that, I was talking to you before, where that line is drawn. Maybe I go beyond that line sometimes. But then on the flip side, I also receive that. But I've got to the point where I'm like, why bother? Why worry about it? You're never going to meet these people. It doesn't matter if someone calls you a moron online. Why ever get worried about it? Yeah, I don't know. But I appreciate that some people do get like that.
I've been dealing with it for a while now with all my projects, and I think one of the perfect thing that I've heard was Kev Smith, who's like, "Don't ever go into the comments. Don't ever go." I mean, these footballers, they need to learn to, if you know you're not strong enough to stomach it, stay away from those comments, because it won't help.
Well, we had a player called Amadi Holloway who literally 3 weeks ago had a really bad game. He's not very good, to be honest with you. He's a striker. He probably should be a defender. He never scores. He was getting a lot of grief off the fans, and he put on something on social media about the fans later that night. There's nothing worse. All that does is make the situation better. It's maybe made him feel a little better, but at the end of the day, it's only going to solidify issues that you might have with the fan base. But we don't get too much grief, me and Ollie, to be fair, because I think what's clear of our podcast is that we're honest, and it's just our opinions. We're not saying anything for drama. We're not trying to make up things that are going to cause trouble just to make the podcast go better. It's just our honest opinions, and you can never really criticise someone for an honest opinion, can you? So
No. Did the club ever reach out to you to send a message? No.
No, not really. No, it's not. It's not the right platform. One thing I'm very defensive about and quite strong on about the stuff that I do with Twitter and Facebook and other things that we've got, the fanzine and the podcast, is that it's independent. I wouldn't want to be a cow and tail to the football club. If they want to offer us opportunities like we talked about before, it's fine. I'll go along with an open mind and then I'll feedback what I think. But it's an independent fan view.
You want to be able to feel free to say what you like and how you want to say it. Yeah,
and there's been times with the fanzine back in the day where we said what we felt and made jokes about the chairman in poor taste, maybe, I suppose, but that's what fanzines are about. And we would get called to the football club for a telling off, and I just give up now, to be honest with you. If the football club phoned me up and said, come in, we want to talk to you about it, we're not happy with something you said, I wouldn't even go. It's completely pointless, to be honest.
That'd be like working for Marvel and saying, I didn't like Black Panther,
Yeah.
That would be the same. So, well, I love what you're doing. I love that I've got a pod friend that lives around the corner. You can come around for a cup of tea. You're welcome around my house for a cup of tea anytime you like. If you want any advice on mixers and mics or whatever, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've got more kit than me and Ollie have, so I think I've got someone that knows what they're doing.
I saved up for this for so long. I mean, like I said, we started off with snowball mics and a mic and a laptop. That was it, So I saved up long and hard for all this, all the cables, everything, because it's not cheap. And I'm already looking to upgrade already. So
there you go.
When I can afford it, I'll be getting some new mics and things. I'm going to need to anyway with the new hosts. You
need more mics, yeah.
So, well, thank you very much for joining me. It's been really nice chatting to you, man.
You.
Like I said, I didn't write anything. I didn't write any notes, because this is an experiment to see how fellow podcasters get on, and look at what happened.
There you go, perfect.
We've done an hour and 5 minutes already.
That's pretty short for our podcast.
Yeah.
we often go an hour and 15, and we're like, we should probably knock this on the head now.
Yeah.
That's good. I think that when people enjoy each other's company, you end up getting something that's listening to ball too. So.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe we'll have a couple of beers next time.
There you go.
That'd be really good.
Good man.
So one last question before we go, and I ask it for everyone. And if you listen to my episodes, you'll know what does Shrewsbury mean to you?
Shrewsbury is my hometown. I adore living here. I'm going to raise my children here in the same way that my mum and dad raised me in this town, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, in all honesty. It's the only place I've ever lived, really, other than university, and I've been, with work, travelled to a lot of towns, a lot of villages, cities. I've never found anywhere that I adore as much as my hometown, and that's as much as you can say, really, as a true Shropshire mon. Let's leave it at that.
Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much. Peace out.
Peace out.